started.
Okay, good evening, everybody. This is the Town of Harwich Finance Committee meeting, Thursday, June 6th, 2024. We'll call the meeting to order. I'll just note that this meeting is being recorded. Anyone in the audience who is attempting or has a desire to record this meeting, please check in with the chair so that we can get that coordinated. So having said that, first item on the agenda will be the minutes of May 6th, which is the first night of town meeting. Minutes have been circulated. I will entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Second.
It'd be easier just to do it this way. I'm just gonna. I
Okay,
don't wanna keep
and
going
moving
over
second to
that.
approve the minutes of May 6th. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll put it to vote. Mark?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 0. Thank you very much. Okay, the other evening at the Selectmen's meeting, we got a chance to meet with them and talk about communications in the process of leading up to town meeting. I think it was a productive meeting. We'll see what we all learn from it, what comes out of it. So hopefully we'll have a better time of it, in the coming year. I think one of the keys is when we get free cash certified, because it was so late this year. It just delayed a lot of decisions and made it difficult to get things done. So I'm hopeful that's going to get rectified in the year ahead. I did circulate to everybody the town clerk's summary of town meeting. I think you folks all got that. Emily does a good job of every article, what happened, so you have that as a record, if you will, moving forward. Does anybody else have anything on that debriefing or any items they want to bring up regarding the town meeting debriefing?
I have some handouts first, but you can just pass that packet. That one, and that one.
There you go,
Oh, it's
pass
packets.
around.
Oh, okay,
Just
sorry.
keep going till we stop.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. There you go.
I think that's everybody, is it?
Yes, thank you.
Do you want one? Okay. First of all, I just gave everybody their contact information. I do have a list of, remember I said if there was a website, what documents we would like to see on it. I did put together a list, a draft of what I thought should be on it. And it's for you to take and cross out any that you don't think need to be on it, or add any that you do think need to be on it. And the next time we meet, we can go over it and kind of agree or disagree what should be on it. But it's kind of takes into account things that we've asked for in the past and just said they should be on the list. The one thing I forgot to put on here was the actual warrant, but that should be on there as well, the current warrant. And then when we get to a new warrant, that should, so I've already added one to it, but this is kind of what I came up with, and a little bit about what kind of format we try to look for on each type of document. The other thing I did.
So hang on a second, just to
Yep.
be clear on that. So when you say the next time I meet, you're not going to be here for 3 months.
Well,
So
I will be here right up there, probably.
in the middle of Denali, you're going to be there?
I'm gonna try
And there's a
to.
questioning about what that is, but let me, since we have our are you the new liaison? Did you guys vote that in, or are you just here for fun?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am not here for fun.
Okay.
Just to get that out there and make that.
You might want to
clear.
sit with the microphone.
But wait, this is fun, This is not like the meetings you have.
To address you, thank you for having me. I am not here for fun. I am here as your liaison. We have not reorganized our liaison list.
Okay, good. And we, as a group, don't reorganize until after the end of the fiscal year. So
Right.
We got you.
Here we are,
Okay.
at least tonight. We'll see what happens next time.
So-
Excuse me, could I ask Mr. Hughes to speak up a bit? I'm having trouble hearing. I didn't have any trouble hearing Dana, but
Okay, could I suggest you move to a front or seat closer here maybe, if you don't mind?
well, it's hard for me to do that.
Okay, well, I'll try and yell, I don't know. Go ahead, Jeff, so just hang in there for a second. So Dana has here a list of reports, and we did mention the other night about reports and put them on a website and whatnot, that type of thing. Do you have an expectation as to who's actually going to do that within town government?
I do not have an expectation who's going to do that in town government. I think I will take this back with me tonight, and I will begin asking questions.
Okay, so the reason I'm doing this and talking about you not being here for a
Right,
while
yeah.
is that I think this is a great starting point, and it may have everything at the moment that we need. And I'd rather, based on what you just said, Jeff, hand this off to Jeff and say, hey, how do we make this happen for the coming year?
Sure.
And who's going to do it, and, you know, that kind of thing,
Yep.
right?
Yep, absolutely.
So-
Yeah, because certainly anything we would request, it has to be, you know, gone through the board, and administration would have to do it physically, and all those things would have to be involved. This was just to get us on the same page if I could. That's all I was doing with that.
And if I may, Mr. Chair,
Sure.
to the committee here, I think if I continue as liaison, which I hope I do, and I think some of you hope I do as well,
I think all of us hope. you do.
great. It would be fantastic if there is something that you all want, to have the chair directly ask me, and I will come right here, and I will get you what you want. That way, the communication line is going to be consistent and effective throughout the entire process. I feel I have the ability to expedite the request and the asks of this committee. So instead of searching for it in different places, just put your request to me in an email, and I will, that day, go and find the answer for you.
Yeah.
Go and get you the information, if that's appropriate for
It
you.
is very appropriate. I'll just point out that fortunately or unfortunately, the last couple of years, it's been the town administrator we've been pointed to specifically through me to ask for information. And as you saw in this last go-around, the one information that we asked for we couldn't get, we ended up voting to do a request for release of public documents. Not a good way to do business, right?
Nope,
So
Agreed.
I'm perfectly happy if you're willing to take that on and be the point person, which I think is very appropriate.
100%.
Okay, you got it.
Thank you.
All right. So anything else you want to say on this?
Yeah, just real quickly, I did give you a copy of where we ended up the year. So you have the 5-year capital plan on the top,
Okay.
and then you have the budget that we passed, and then you have, that's 3 pages, and then you have the warrant, my copy of one-liners. Now, these, to be certain, are copies of my documents that I do. These are not the official town ones. They do match as well as one person can physically do it. But this is a starting point. I will send these to you electronically over the next couple days, so you have them as spreadsheets rather than just a copy of them, but I wanted to explain what I'm doing. And then,
Did you receive these as spreadsheets, or did you have to?
oh no,
add
I
it
made,
in or
I
all by
made
yourself?
those.
Because that, one thing that, if these reports could be in spreadsheet form, that would be
Yeah.
helpful for
Wouldn't
the
it?
analysis
Yeah.
that we do, instead of PDF or whatever
Yeah.
other hard.
I'm
sort
sure
of
when we
copy.
do meet with the board, that will be discussed. And then, as I said in the meeting Monday night with the select board, I put together, the last page is kind of what I already see for articles for next year's town meeting that will probably be there. And the last page of the staple thing, let's say.
Yeah.
So,
How come you don't have the petition articles that were submitted this year? Huh? How come you don't have the petition articles coming back that were submitted this year?
I don't know. I just put, there will be petition articles, and most of these are things that come up every year. Some of them, we'll have to get the numbers, obviously, before we can vote on them, but the customary ones are all done and things like that. These things will be on the warrant.
So Dana, I thought we talked once or twice, maybe not so much during the process of getting up to town meeting, that going forward, it might be advantageous for someone else to help you with this. to
Yep,
get
yep.
an integration of the experience, if you will.
Yep,
so that at some point you decide to move on or not be available, whatever, that someone will be up to speed on the, on this board and be able to jump in and help you with that.
Yeah, and I was gonna make those two requests. I was gonna request of Michelle that she helps me with the spreadsheets, or we do that together. And then I was gonna request of our clerk that he helps me with the reasons, when we get to the reasons behind the articles.
Yeah.
So if we could
You
do
a great
that
job,
stuff,
You okay with that?
Yeah.
You
I'm
okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
and,
I don't want you to build an organization, but I think it's helpful, particularly with your,
Oh, definitely.
not being in town all the time.
yep,
That if we can have an integration of capabilities, if you will,
definitely.
and you guys, amongst the three of you, can trade the documents around and then come here as we need them and go through it.
And then the last paperclip group has to do with the next subject, which is revolving funds. But like I said, I will send these out electronically to you, and I will include some things that I didn't include there because they're just too many pages to print out, like the reasons and a couple of other things that I think are important. So that's how I will task myself to do those. That's all I have on the first part of our agenda.
Okay, anybody else on town meeting? Town meeting debriefing? Okay, we'll move on to the revolving fund information. And by the way, as part of the revolving fund information, the other night, I talked about, I guess, primarily about putting together a report for 204 Sisson Road. We haven't voted that here, and I want to bring that here tonight, just whether this group is interested in doing that. But the problem I've had over recent history is that I keep hearing, and I'm sort of making this up, but in the corner of somebody's office is a pile of paper, and that's got everything there is to do with 204. It just seemed to me that if the Finance Committee developed a 3 or 4 page document based on the information we'll have at the close of business in 2024, to look at the history financially of, operating expenses, about revenues that came in, about money that's being spent on capital projects, what's in the pipeline, et cetera, and actually memorialize that information so that anybody else in town who wants to see it can take that and read it. We can give some opinions. For instance, I think we have agreed previously that the operating budget, that instead of using a revolving account for everything over there, it should be part of a budget, okay? And I firmly believe that the documentation bears that out, because the revolving fund items I see are not focused on programs, they're focused on things like, the alarm system and the gas bill and, those kinds of things, the salary and wages for janitorial services, those kind of things. Now, in the end, we can simply say if it's correct that the operating expenses are covered by the revenues they're taking in, if it's correct. And then we can say, oh, and by the way, I don't know if that does or does not mean that the cultural director is included in that or not. I mean, we can at least identify those things without saying, oh, you have to raise all your fees to cover that. And I'm just making that sort of up. But this thing has been talked about ad infinitum, and I just think with basically a 5-year track record now, that, we should take it on, and the selectmen agreed the other night, yeah, go do it, and let's see where it takes us. So my expectation of that is that once the books are closed for 2024, we'll get the information or ask for the information we need in a form that we want it in. Hopefully we get it back within a couple of weeks, and we can go off and at least put a draft together. And just like with the warrant, I'm starting to put words together now, just, introductory stuff and whatnot, to get this thing organized. So, are we in agreement that we want to do that?
You want a motion, or do you just want consensus?
I think you could make a motion.
I move that we support the idea of putting together such a memo after the year is closed and after we've received information on how things ended up at the end of the year, including the revolving fund.
Second?
So I'm just gonna, because we never know if our recording system actually works or not.
Looks like it might be, I don't know.
Yeah, I know, it looks like it, but sometimes it doesn't. All right, so Dana, I think you moved to develop the 204 Sisson financial history
Yep.
and probably recommendations moving forward.
Yep.
Is that it? And Mark Hammer is second, right? Mark?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Discussion on that motion?
I'll help you. If you need any help, I'm interested in that building, so I'd be very interested.
I'll be the one developing it.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm very
so-
willing to help, so.
yeah, okay. Good.
None for you.
Apparently.
Well, notice that Mr. McCready came in at 6:19. Passing his little name tag and we'll get there. Welcome, Bob. Bob did tell me he was gonna be late, so that's perfectly fine. Right. Okay, so we have a motion on the table. The motion is, just so you know, Bob, Dana moved to develop the 204 System Financial and Recommendation document that we talked about the other night at the selectmen's meeting.
I'm sorry, what was the document?
The 204 Sisson Road Financial History document, and recommendations for moving forward. Mark Hammer has seconded that. And now we're into discussion, if you'd like to discuss anything.
I'd just like to broaden it to be addressing the entire group of revolving funds at the same time.
It's only gonna be on 204. Revolving funds in general is something we're gonna take up separately.
I'm sorry? Again with this.
This document is with addressing 204 Sisson Road only. We will take up separately all the other revolving funds.
Okay,
Okay,
okay.
all right. All right, any further discussion?
And we're not changing anything, it's just gonna be recommendations based upon an analysis of the trends, right?
So, okay, so let's back up a second. For this town meeting we just finished, leading up to that, I communicated with the chair that this committee thought that 204 Sisson Road should fall under the operating budget. That was the memo or email I referred to that came out in March something. I don't have it in front of me. And that's what we think, unless the analysis shows us differently. So that's where we're headed. Okay, you can have all kinds of discussion, and we'll at least identify the capital projects that are going on there, what's been done, what's in the pipeline, identify how much free cash has been appropriated to support those previously and as we move forward, because there's a balance and there's lots of things left to do. One can argue whether that's a prudent investment or not, but that's where it is, okay? And, you know, there can be discussion about, gee, we tied up free cash for stuff that hasn't been spent yet. I mean, I gotta see where the numbers take us, but I mean, there's all those kinds of things. So we would have some recommendations, but the intent is to provide a document, again, maybe 4 pages, that just summarizes where that thing's been for the last 5 years. Okay. All right, further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. Bob?
Aye.
Okay, Mark?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
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 Chair's an aye. 1, 2, 3, 4. 7-0. Okay. Revolving funds. In
Okay.
general.
In general, if you look at the Article 39 that we passed at town meeting, we got a packet of information with the revolving fund stuff in it, but there were 4 that weren't mentioned at all. We didn't get in the packet of backup. One was the Golf Infrastructure Fund. I don't know any history on that one. We didn't get any documentation on that one. The cemetery, and I don't know by that if they meant a revolving fund or if they meant perpetual care funds. Two completely different things, I think, but we didn't get anything on that. The wetlands revolving fund, we didn't get anything on that. So there's still some out there that we just didn't get any information on them. The wetlands one is $6,000 is the cap, so it can't be a big revolving fund. The cemetery is $100,000. And I didn't even know that, I guess in my mind, really realized there was a cemetery revolving fund, and I'm just making the assumption it's different than the perpetual care funds, which is a fund that just takes care of the cemetery in terms of interments and things like that. And then the golf infrastructure, I know about that fund, and I can remember when we created it, and it was different from the golf pro shop and restaurant lease revenue. But I don't know, we don't have any history of what's in there, what's been taken out, any of that kind of stuff. So just going forward. There were two of the funds that I think, if someone said, what's your recommendation? My recommendation on two of the funds would be just to eliminate them. One is the Albro House. It's the $10,000 one. I think on the Albro House, $339 have come out of it, and there's a balance of $47,608, and money every year, $6,000 to $7,000 has gone into it. I don't know what it's all about. Don't really.
Is that renting the space over there?
Could be, but again, if we think about what would really happen if something had to be fixed at the Albro House, if it was something within a budget at Highway now, they would come fix it. They take care of the grounds and smaller kind of fixes that way. And if it was something major, it would come in an article looking for money. Certainly, from the activity, I would say there are no programs or anything going on with this revolving fund. It's just sitting there. And like I say, in 2021, $339 came out. Nothing before that, nothing after that. It was just one expense out of it. So it's an inactive fund in my mind. Maybe details later would tell me that it's great, we should keep it, blah, 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 blah. But in my mind right now, that's one that,
I have a question.
sure.
Yes, please.
So who manages the money in these funds? Like, who at the end of the day is accountable for that number? Is that the finance director who reconciles, okay?
Well,
How does
Yeah,
that
go
work?
ahead, yeah.
the town departments manage it as far as the physical activity. The treasury takes money in, the, warrants are prepared, the money goes out through the office that pays our bills. But
Accounts payable.
Accounts payable.
Accounts payable.
They do all of that. But the actual person that it reports to is all under the town administrator. So that would be, for all of these, if you look at that, if you go back to the actual language, that's right in there, that these are all under the town administrator's guidance and control.
And they do have an operating budget, but it's tiny. It's like $5,000
Yeah.
a year in the warrant.
And that pays for electricity and things like that, So that would be, as we go through these, what are we gonna do with them? That would be one way to think about that one. It's different from golf and other ones that are doing other things. The other one that's similar to that is sidewalks. And I noticed at the last meeting the select board had, they talked about sidewalks. But that's another one that's just sitting, and I don't know if I have it somewhere. It's a $50,000 limit. It's had no activity on it. Money's gone into it, but nothing's come out. And again, I would rather see it be a line item like it used to be. It used to be a $25,000 line item per year in the highway department budget. We could argue during budget season whether that should be higher, lower, whatever, but to me, it's a budgetary item. If we're gonna fix any sidewalks in town, if we're gonna do something major like we are planning to do on Route 28 at some point, that's in conjunction with the state. We're gonna try and do stuff with grants, all those kinds of things. But as a revolving fund, no one pays to use the sidewalks. You don't have a toll booth or anything.
Hey, maybe we should.
And money isn't coming out of this, it's just there. So in looking at things like that and thinking about them, there was one expenditure from that one, I stand corrected. There's $69,959 in that one right now. Again, in 2021, different people, different accounting, one bill came out of $16,554. I don't know what that was for, I don't know the history, but before that or after that, no money's come out and money's gone in. So
I have another question. So,
that's
Absolutely,
your
answer
limit.
your question. Okay, you only get one.
so a revolving fund, so let's just say your limit is 50,000, like you say.
Yep.
You take out 5 that year for whatever the purpose was. When we go to fund it the next year, are we putting back in 5? In other words, we always, or that's just a spending limit?
That's a limit.
That's a
Just a
limit.
limit.
That's a limit,
The actual number is the
Right.
number.
yeah.
So if they only, you have a limit of 50,000, if they only
Right.
had 37 in there.
So in that particular fund, if we didn't spend, I mean, they almost have $70,000 in there. If we didn't add another, and I don't know how money goes into the sidewalk fund, I have no idea. But if we didn't add another penny, and they were spending it at $5,000 a year or whatever, $70,000 is gonna take care of quite a few years. How many?
But
I
the,
guess that's the question, has there been any, again, before I got here, I apologize, any conversation leading up to this about the philosophy of what a revolving fund is?
That was my question.
'Cause
Okay.
I think that there's some.
I was just gonna
We're not
start
really-
that.
Yeah,
Really clear.
and that's, I take the long-winded approach, but that's kind of how we get to those philosophies. What are the purposes of these? What are the sources of funds going into them when they come out? Now,
Because
when
revenue plays a part of that.
when I was involved in, when the recreation department created their,
That's the easiest
revolving
one to
fund.
talk about, by the way.
Right.
So it's very clear, so let's focus on.
the idea of that one was to give them programs flexibility. In other words, if they had in their budget 50 people to play T-ball and 60 people showed up, how do you pay for those other 10 people? Well, you collect the funds, you put it in the revolving account, and you use the money. Except, to the best of my knowledge, looking through all of their accounts, there are some credit card bills that they pay, which may be included for equipment and things like that, but they don't buy uniforms, hats for T-ball, shirts for T-ball. They don't buy equipment that I can see. They can correct me. We don't know all the answers yet, but under the headings that they have, they're not doing that. They're buying a lot of personnel. They're paying for a lot of other things, services and stuff, but they're not buying equipment for these kind of situations. And that, for that one account, because I was personally involved, was the reason it was created.
So it's to handle situations where there's a variable activity, something that could be low or high, and revenue and expense both vary with that level of activity, and it's something that would be hard to budget, so you put it in a revolving fund, which should be self-balancing, because they price things to cover their variable costs. Is that one philosophical
Right.
basis?
Yeah,
Right,
except
yes.
then you get the 204 Sisson Road, and it was easy to just say, we'll use a revolving fund to
Yeah, that
manage
doesn't really
that.
fit that particular
It doesn't
philosophy.
fit that.
That's why I gave that one as an example, because that's one I know about.
Because
If you-
rents go in, I'm talking about 204,
Mm-hmm.
rents go in and whatever fees. And as you can see from the documentation we have over the years, they've paid the gas bill and electric bill and, blah, blah, blah.
So if you go to the law, section 53E-1/2 revolving funds, it is intended to allow for flexible discretionary programs. Funds cannot be transferred for general fund expenses. Such a transfer would hurt the intent of the programs.
And no full-time staff in a revolving.
It's very clear on staff. It says revolving fund expenditures shall not be made to pay wages or salaries for full-time employees unless the revolving fund is also charged for the cost of fringe benefits associated with the wages or salaries so paid. And that's, there are four, and I've got a document on that one. There are several accounts that have wages. And if you go to this one here, I added them all up. And, there's quite a few dollars in payroll every year. In 2023, the last year we have a full year, almost $59,000 in wages. Now, they get around this rule in the thing by saying these are part-time people, they don't have
Yeah.
benefits, but they do have expenses. They get shirts, they get training, they get equipment. They do have expenses that go with these, but the town gets nothing out of the revolving fund to pay for those things. They just pay their wages from the revolving fund.
And part of what you were looking to do, and correct me if I'm wrong, when we first started this discussion a couple months ago, was to try and recognize that in the administration of these revolving funds and whatnot, there is some, just call it G&A or overhead costs associated with the town.
Yes,
Like the town accountant has to do something with all these things, et cetera, et cetera. And you were looking at the possibility, I believe, or at least talking about it, of maybe designating a small portion of that to cover, at least recognize and cover some of those expenses. So some of those funds would get transferred into the budget.
yeah. And so, again, going back to when I started looking at this, I think the intent for some of the revolving funds is correct, it's good. I think a lot of the, these kind of evolved to where they are today. Now we've got a chance to talk to the board about resetting some of these. I think some of the numbers can come way down in terms of, and as I've already explained, I think 2 could be eliminated outright. I think maybe more could, once we hear what these other ones are for, the ones we didn't get in cemetery and wetlands, But it's a chance for us to talk about them, reset them. I wouldn't mind at all, every one of these people keeping a revolving fund in general, if it was for a purpose, the funds that were going into it were identify it, and everything else was put into the general fund so that that could help cover the expenses that go with it. And the select board, when setting their fees, would be asked to take into account that we're paying for people and other things here that's being accounted for several departments. Let's get some of that revenue coming into the general fund where it can be used for that purpose, to help offset that purpose. Right now, these programs, and it really came to a head in my mind when I get confused from time to time.
Don't get confused.
Recreation was before us, and they said they wanted to expand their programs. And they wanted money in their budget to do that. And it's like, well, if they're gonna get all the revenue out of this, and we're just gonna pay for the ability for them to expand, this thing never ends. This thing just keeps going on and on and on. There has to be some sort of idea in our mind is, one, how does the town get reimbursed for its cost, like we do with the enterprise fund and water? We get 10% back from them to pay for administration, treasury, accounting, all the people, and in all of these things, generally highways involved to prep grounds and to move stuff, things like that. They don't get money from these revolving, nobody does in the town side of things. And as we saw in the total, what is it, $1.3 million or so that's in there right now. The problem we have going forward is, as simple as Peter made it sound, it's the money comes second. You have to budget it and then earn it. So it's not as simple as saying, okay, we're just gonna budget this, put an amount in there that we don't know if it's coming yet or not. Generally, the town's very conservative. It goes based on last year's actuals as to what to budget for next year. The current year is not involved at all. Last year's actuals to budget for next year. So you can't say, well, we're just gonna throw in a number. We are gonna have to appropriate it the first year. So I don't see us getting rid of the whole list all at once. Michelle?
This
So,
is your third question.
I know. I'm very confused by this whole concept. But
I'm sorry.
So if I put, no, you're doing a great job
Okay, wait,
explaining it.
time out.
Yeah.
Does everyone, and we made sure a couple of years ago we did this, does everyone have at least an electronic copy of the MMA Finance Committee handbook? It's about that thick.
I do now, thanks to Dana.
Okay, so you have it electronically, do you
Yeah,
have
I
it?
do have it, yes.
Okay, so if you go in there and just look at something simple like glossary of terms,
Yeah,
they have a nice description of revolving accounts
I understand.
as a start.
Yeah,
I
no,
just
I
wanna make sure you
understand
have
it
the document.
conceptually. I'm just trying to understand operationally. So if for the year, we put $50,000 in the sidewalk fund, and that money's never used, where does that money go next year? Like,
I
isn't
don't
that
know how
fif-
we put money in the sidewalk fund.
It's never appropriated into a revolving.
That's
It's not
my question.
appropriated into it,
That's where I'm
no.
getting confused.
They get it from, do you know how the sidewalk gets their
It's like somebody
funds?
I have no idea.
donates it or something.
Right.
I really don't know how the
Well, it's a
sidewalk.
grant.
Surprise, either do I.
Doesn't
The
matter
coin
if it's
is
side.
found
But we
on the
don't budget
sidewalk.
for the sidewalk. The money is just there.
I think-
Does it sit there forever?
Yeah.
And then if it gets
Well,
down
there's
to
a-
40, then you put an extra 10 in the next year? That's,
We don't
I'm,
put it
I
in.
wouldn't.
you don't
Upon-
put it
We
in?
don't.
You ready?
On termination, it goes to general fund,
Yeah,
doesn't
on
it?
termination of a revolving fund, the balance in the fund at the end of the fiscal year shall revert to surplus revenue. So if we close some of these out, we wouldn't get what's in there until the
Next year.
end of that fiscal year. And it would be basically free cash for that next year. All right, so in my mind, we're gonna have to work out some sort of agreeable arrangement with the policymakers as to, okay, we think we can bring some of these down. How do you want to do that? What is the best approach? And the best approach is going to be either pick them off one at a time, like the cultural center, and say, that's the first one we want to take care of. And if that means we have to, in the next year's budget cycle, put 200 and something thousand dollars in for their budget, like we did 250,000 for the childcare this year, if we were to put money in and appropriate it for their budget, we could then say, you're using your revolving fund for programs, but you're not paying this person or that person, you're not paying for your building, you're just program, and it's a much smaller number, and maybe we vote to make the $300,000 number a $50,000 number, or something smaller.
And hang on, in the case of 204, we have contracts for people to rent space.
Yes,
So it's, I think with certainty, 95% certainty, as long as we're close to 100% capacity, you can schedule every month how much is coming in for the rents, unless you get some folks that fall behind or whatever. So you can
Right.
cash flow this thing over the course of that first year for the most part, for
Yeah.
that one instance.
right. If it can be done, and if that was part of the arrangement made with
Yeah.
the policymakers. I think he has something he'd like to say now.
I can wait. Go ahead, Mark, please.
So I did a little Googling, and according to the Harwich Planning Board Subcommittee notes from September 2015, Don Howell stated that he was the clerk of the planning board when the sidewalk fund was started. He did not find that the monies from the fund have been specifically blah, 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 blah. So we may want to ask him about the sidewalk fund.
That's okay. Scott?
I was just gonna say that if we were to take those kind of fixed expenses like utilities into the operating budget, out of the revolving fund, we would also take the rent revenue into the operating budget, so it would be a wash for the general budget,
That would
correct?
be the idea. Well, that would be the idea.
Yeah.
But there's still a lag, you know, financially, there's still a lag, so that's one we'd have to be careful of.
It's up to you.
Thank you. And I speak for myself, not the select board.
We understand.
I'm making sure. One of the questions I would want answered is if we take out money from the revolving fund and create or put that in the operating budget, and we miss and fall short, and a department needs more money, where the year before, prior to the change, hypothetically, in your words, I'm just making this up, where they could draw from the revolving fund, but now there's an overage. Where do they get the delta? Where do they go find
Overage of expenses?
overage of, so in my mind, the way I look
It's
at it,
short.
Short.
Okay, so what they would
Correct.
typically do is come to this committee
Mm-hmm.
and make a reserve fund request.
Okay, that's what I figured.
Or at the end of the year, the town is allowed to move, under certain rules, 3% of their budget
Correct.
to fix things.
Right.
Well, and we will most likely within the next month, once we get to the actual end of the year, either at our next meeting or we'll have a special meeting where the finance director and Joe Powers will come in and say, okay, we need to make these transfers. I mean, that's a typical end of the year thing.
So,
But it's also why when our reserve fund at the moment is fired at $50,000. We want to take that to 125
Right.
to help address some of these things.
and if I may just build on that quickly, I look at the rec department, and if we ask the rec department to budget out their summertime help, program summertime employment help, that's now currently in the revolving, paid out of the revolving fund. And there's an excess of children, an excess of programs, and they need the money in real time. They're able to come to this board and request.
Yes.
Yeah, so what would happen is, if it's, let's say it was early in the summer season, and they saw that was happening, like they were gonna have a shortfall, what we would probably do, instead of saying, okay, we have the rest of the fiscal year to get through with our reserve fund, instead of giving the money right then, we'd say, okay, we're gonna encumber those funds, so if you really need them when you get to the end, you
We'll
got
have-
them.
So escrow the funds, so to speak, and if you
Yeah.
need it down the, near the end of the fiscal year,
Yeah,
we've earmarked it.
Means that they can continue safely in their minds, knowing that there's a backup, and that if things improve and they end up needing only
Sure.
$80 instead of 200,
Sure.
whatever.
Understood. Thank you for answering the question.
you know, we had the harbor master in here a couple weeks ago, because he blew an engine
Right.
in his boat, and $24,000, $25,000, something like that. You know, we were able to accommodate that, otherwise he was gonna have to wait until beginning of the new year, July 1st, to a vessel that really needs it, right? That's his primary response vessel.
And that would be an unforeseen expense.
It is, yeah, it was.
So I'm just making sure that in our minds, an unforeseen expense of the rec department coming in and asking for more funds because they had more children, that would be considered an unforeseen expense.
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay.
And just in the courts, it's also been adjudicated that if the finance committee says it was unforeseen,
Then it's
then it's
unforeseen.
unforeseen.
Understood.
We used to get requests for things. I mean, I remember these vividly about, you know, like the old police station would lose a boiler or something.
Yep.
In February. Well, you gotta fix it, right? And they didn't anticipate it was gonna go.
Yeah.
So they come make a request. And as long as we had the money, it was fine. I mean,
Sure.
our reserve
and
fund
it-
used to be a lot higher than it is now.
In a case like that, they would fix it and just know that the boiler went, it's February, we had to get a guy, it was $200,000. Back then, we had $300,000 in the thing, and we would give them the money.
It also allows departments that they hopefully care to budget a little tighter, because they know they have a backup if they need it.
I guess two things. One, the expenses that get moved, it also, then that's part of becomes part of their budgeting system. So they should be budgeting with that in mind, with those, with whatever in mind. That it's not just, it doesn't just stay, everything stays the same. Now, the town, there may be more expenses, they should be budgeting. And a second one is, because it may apply to the rec department, and I don't want to get into.
We're not picking on the rec department, by the
Exactly,
way.
start
It's-
picking
Right.
on things, and certainly, the premise and the premise of revolving funds, a bunch of the stuff that we're doing in revolving funds is exactly what we should be using revolving funds for. So don't think globally about or cherry pick stuff that may make
Right.
perfectly good sense to be part of a revolving fund. And it's not a topic, and it's really a one-by-one kind of review of the sides. I know one of the we're talking about expenses, but I think one of the components of having revolving funds starts on the other side with departments that are generating revenue and do want to be able to not have that revenue just disappear into the general fund when they have expenses to take care of, program expenses, real legitimate revolving fund program expenses, to use that revenue for and not get lost. So you really have to look at each individual one separately.
Yeah, I agree.
And in our time, there were no revolving funds. When I was chairman of recreation, we had to budget everything. And if we were short 10 kids for T-ball, we passed the hat. And we got those 10 kids in, and we got, we would always order an extra set, enough for a whole team of stuff just in case. It was $5 to do this, order their shirts, and we would charge people $6, knowing that there was going to be one team show up that we could do for it. They're not, once you've gone through the drill, and T-ball went on for decades, once you've gone through the drill in these departments, they'll know how to handle it. They'll have enough experience to say, we need this much for T-ball, this much for whatever, the different functions that they have, and they'll get better at it. But the revolving funds, I think for those portions, should stay. But I think what can be budgeted should be budgeted. And there's two things I'll just go over quickly. One, there was a document I put together on just the salary and wages, right? So 4 departments are paying for people with their revolving funds to the tune of $258,791.38.
Full-time, part-time.
Part-time, all part-timers. They're paying for positions, they're paying for,
So Rec and Youth, for instance, is paying all the lifeguards, right?
I don't think they're paying for lifeguards that way. I think they're paying for, they still have in their budget seasonal employees. I'm not sure whether these are just program specialists. I know they paid some overtime to different people that work in the department.
I can tell you. Hold on.
But in any event, just to me personally, going back 30 years here, to me personally, the idea of having personnel in a revolving fund, and even the people that put together the law know the hazard of it. Full-timers know. Part-timers, they're probably not too keen on. I don't think, there are expenses that go with those. I would like to see those expenses get back to the budget somehow. I would like to see all personnel, and that would have to be an edict from the policymakers, all personnel out of revolving funds. And if that first $250,000 we had to spend to get it into the budget, I would gladly follow that and do that to get the personnel out of the revolving funds. But we might not be able to do it that way because now you're splitting revenues and all kinds of, it might be just too complicated for us to do. And the easier way to do it is to, the other 2 sheets I provided, one is Peter's sheet, his breakdown of 204 Sisson, this one here.
And by the way, just to give credit to the finance director, she gave us month by month for every one
Right,
of those things.
right.
so.
And then the other one with this stuff on it was my breakdown of the thing. And I went below that and tried to find things from the budget and things from articles that you can see identified down the bottom. the idea being that $200,000 there also fixes this one. So it may be that we're doing them one at a time and fixing them that way. Or maybe we're doing it as a classification like salary and wages at a time. I don't know. It's gonna have to be worked out with the policymakers and so forth. Some of them, I don't think we need to change at all. Golf is doing what they're supposed to be doing. You see the money go in and the money come out. Golf is paying for hats and selling hats and paying for hats and selling hats and all of those things. They do have some personnel in there. I don't think the personnel should be in there, but they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Also, Council on Aging seem to be doing what they're supposed to doing. They don't have people in there. They are just paying for services to their things, and they're getting a revenue from that, and they're putting it in there to pay for people to work on people's feet. I don't know how you feel about people's feet, but I wouldn't want to work on people's feet. But that's one of the things that they buy
Somebody
as a
has to.
service, right? They buy that service, they collect money for it, and it's
Michelle
all
has a
done to
question
the
about
rebuy.
feet. This is your fourth question.
You're 4 feet in now.
See, I'm very into this subject.
I know it.
So, they set a fee, for example, but they don't, sometimes the fees that they set, it's an estimated fee, right? Don't cover what the expenses end up being that year,
Right.
for whatever reason.
Right.
Okay, so,
And they have a not to exceed balance, and if you look through all the documentation that we got, most of them, they're spending their revolving funds now and they're going overboard, but they have the cushion to be able to do that. Every once in a while, they gotta get the number down below their threshold so that they don't go over, so they get it down kind of deal.
So my suggestion, just to move this forward.
Sure. I talked enough.
Well, it's okay. No, it's good to get the topic out there. But let's end 2024 and get the numbers for 2024, so you can update the numbers. We're going to be doing something with 204 Sisson, so that will come out in that discussion, whatever it is, right? And then I would suggest, since it's a pretty large number, and because you have a lot of experience with youth and rec, that maybe that's the one we focus on, not to pick on them, but you know enough detail about how that system operates to be able to work the ins and outs as to how it really needs to work or what's happening. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah.
And I think for the coming year, if we could tackle those two, yay or nay, that would be worthwhile doing.
Yeah, because the print is so small on that one, I haven't gone into that one yet, and that's one that I was hoping that we could ask for the actual spreadsheet on that one, so I could put it up to 125% and actually see the numbers. If not, I'll get my magnifying glass out and go through it, but I have set up a book with all the different ones and all the backup for them, and I started doing analysis on their whole program, but I think for what we're doing, if we have FY '23 and FY '24, that's gonna be the most current analysis, and that we don't need to go back through the others. We'll have it
Right.
for historical data and so forth, but as far as making a decision, I would be comfortable saying, well, here's '23 and '24, what are we doing for '25?
And I really think, hang on a second, I really think that if you're gonna recommend some kind of a change or whatever for the coming budget season, that probably in October that has to be decided.
Yes, yeah, and that's always been the problem in the past, is that whenever we talk about it during budget season, it's so late
too
in the
late.
game,
Yeah,
we
it's
can't
too
do
late.
anything about
It's too
it.
late.
This stuff, we're starting at about the right time to discuss this, to start to analyze it, to start to get the info, and to have Jeff here was just tremendous, because he's hearing firsthand kind of what we're talking about, what we're trying to get to is some sort of policy help on, are these set up the way they should be? Are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? Is there some reason we have personnel in there? And is that a good
Well, the best way, quite
decision?
frankly, is here's how we do it now. Here's what the suggestion is, how to do it moving
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
to get to that point. But
Yeah.
again, it has to be done in a timely manner, so it's before we really get into the budget season, if
Yeah.
you will, if a change is going to be suggested.
And if you look at the other one that I kind of highlighted, tax title, tax title is another small one. It's done through the taxpayer's office. And money goes in every year and money comes out every year. That used to always be done with an article. We used to just have an article to raise and appropriate $50,000 and put it there. And when that started to get low, we would do the next one. And when that started to get low and they've used up the other one, we would do the one after that. And every 2 or 3 years, we'd have to have an article that did that. And I don't know if the revolving fund way of doing it's better, or if that old article way was doing it was better. But it's another one to at least look at. Like I said, there's 2 I would eliminate completely just because of lack of activity. But that one has activity every year in and out, but it's another small one. Is there a better way to handle it? Like I say, before revolving funds, they were all done in a different way. But it's not worth, at this point, if we're gonna discuss them and set some parameters and ideas and talk about them, let's look at all of them and make a determination. So that's how I approached it. And
See if we can come up with policy suggestions so that they're applied across the board on
Right,
some kind of
right,
policy.
right. Identifying both the funds going in out of all of their revenue, like I don't think all of a department's revenue should go into the revolving fund and nothing into the town. I think there should be a split in every case, because a percentage of their effort to have their program is town budgetary money. It's coming from the town. And none, if the entire amount that's being collected is going into the revolving fund, that means none of it gets back to the town as far as paying for these other departments that are doing a lot of the actual paperwork to make all this happen.
So Dana, when they list, let's just say youth and rec, and they got salary and wages, or you have salary and wages in your accounting, does that include paying their FICA?
No, doesn't include it. I mean, it pays their, whatever comes out of their stub is accounted for. But,
No, if someone makes $100 for the week,
yeah,
right? That's what you're talking about is in there, not the 7.65% that we have to pay
Right.
for FICA or anything else.
right.
As an overhead.
I mean, even when I worked part-time for highway, I knew I was costing, so even though they said, well, you're part-time, you don't get overtime, you don't get holidays, you don't get vacation time, I wasn't accruing anything that way, but I was costing them for different things. They would use me a lot for overtime because I was costing them the least amount for overtime, but I was still getting overtime.
I hear we thought it was because you had such a nice personality.
Could be that too. I was at one with the trash, so
Okay.
they would.
You have to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I may, Dana, did I miss a request for information in what you were just saying a couple minutes ago? Did you say there was something you wanted in terms of a spreadsheet? Or maybe I should ask it this way, is there something you want me to go and get for you all
Well,
right now?
first of all, I'm just curious, like on the article that we passed at town meeting.
Right?
And the revolving refund report that we got,
Yep.
why did it not include golf infrastructure fund? Why did it not include cemetery revolving fund? And why did it not include the wetlands fund? I can give you this.
I got it.
And
Okay.
that was sort of a data dump, it wasn't, he was talking about the usability of the information. I think it came out as just a flat file,
Right.
not really.
Which
as
makes me
opposed to
think that
assessment.
maybe these are different kinds of funds, maybe they're not actual revolving funds, I don't know. But we approve them every year on the annual revolving fund list,
Sure.
which is what, if they shouldn't be there, let's get them out of there. Let's get this revolving fund tamed. Let's get it under some semblance of control that, in my perfect world, doesn't include employees and is for the intent of
Okay, but I
what the
think
fund is set
the
up
best
for.
thing we can, I guess, to request, Jeff, is that once we close the books on 2024.
That-
Because I really don't want you to spend your time getting information now, and then we're gonna say,
100%.
once we get
Yeah, sure,
2024 closed, we're gonna come back and ask you again.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we could get the revolving fund accounting, if you will, end of 2024, which probably means it's in July, I don't, you know.
I think
July
it would-
15th is when they
Yeah, I
close
think it would be great if I put the request in now,
Yeah,
so that when we close out 2024, the request is sitting already on the table, and hopefully we can get it to you as quickly as
and
possible.
so one of the questions, just because, you know, we're assuming you're the point person here. Previously, we had done things like would ask Joe Powers, town administrator, or he might say, go directly to the finance director. Let's say we wanted a debt schedule. We'd go to the finance director and should send us something. Do you want to be the point person on all those things at this
I
point?
do.
Okay, I mean, that's
If,
fine.
if I continue on as your
I
liaison.
understand.
And I'm hopeful to continue, and I think the committee, unless somebody wants to really be the liaison to finance, I think I can continue. But I
Okay.
absolutely, I mean, the more people who are in the mix and are getting asked for things, the
Yeah.
less streamlined it is. So
Okay.
I'm 100% committed to making sure that this committee gets what they need as fast as I can possibly get it to you.
Okay,
And then there's only one person to yell at if it
Right.
doesn't happen.
and we know how to get.
That's
hold of
Dana.
it. So, there you go.
for causing all this mess.
So one of the topics that came up the other night was getting to the end of 2024, which is June 30th, and then having a four-person team, if I remember right, sit down and call through the budget line item by line item for 2024 actuals versus what was budgeted to see if we can sweep out anything, you know, like I'm making this up, but if, you know, if the finance committee had a budget of $3,000 a year, only spending $12.50 consistently for the last 3 years, why do we need that kind of money? And those little things can add up. And so I believe, at least what I threw out there, was one selectman, one FinCom member, the town administrator, and the finance director. Those four sit around and go through, you know, what do we got? So, is there someone on this group, maybe it's Bob McCready, that would like to sit down and take that responsibility and work through that? I want to be able to go back through our liaison to the selectmen and say, this is the person we're going to use.
If he doesn't, I would.
Okay. I don't know if you're interested, Bob, or,
I'm fine, yeah, I'll do it.
okay, all right. So
It's like
Jeff-
standing in a line, everybody else step back one.
Yeah, right. The person that comes in late gets the.
You came in late today, so one of the things I included earlier was a list of all the reports we have looked for in the past,
I think I have that here.
and that would be my list looking for going forward.
Well, I
At
know
least
I was-
my list.
I was
Anybody else
thinking
get?
After town meeting, I was thinking of the one you gave us 6 or 8 months ago. I went hunting for it, couldn't find it, but I know you had put together a list a long time ago.
Yeah, this is
We
that
talked about
list.
this topic here.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jeff, will you take that back to the Board of Selectmen and tell them that Bob McCready, no.
Oh, that Bob
No,
McCready.
this is the important one. I mean, the other one's important, but
I
Bob
understand.
McCready is a designated FinCom member to participate in that four-person review of FY 2024 actuals versus budget.
I will.
Okay? And then maybe, if it isn't you, you can pass on to us who the Board of Selectmen is.
Nah, I'm not gonna do that.
Okay?
No,
Of
it's
course
gonna-
I will.
It's gonna be
Of course I
him.
will.
I think we put enough public pressure on to say that you'd like to do it and we'd like you to do it. So if they
Hard to say
vote
no to
someone
that.
else, they're really mad at us. How come that's like that?
Okay, anything else on revolving funds?
That's all I had.
Okay.
Thank you, Dana.
Okay, so just well, okay, under old business, FinCom Reserve Fund. I heard Julie say the other night, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen, that, oh, just ask us for an increase. So my recommendation, we talked about this a little bit before, is that for FY 2026, we asked for $125,000. That was, and Mark had done a good job leading up to town meeting, just kind of surveying other towns. Orleans had some huge number, like $500,000.
Quite a bit, yeah.
Yeah, Brewster had 100,000. We were the lowest
Yeah.
by far at 50,000. So for the size budget we have, and if you think you're going to try and manage budgets a little tighter, I think it's most appropriate that 125 be the number.
What do we have for a balance now?
We had 50, we spent
disappears every year.
24,000.
Yeah, we spent that, so we have
The
20,
26,
25 in there.
25,
25 in
26.
coins. Yeah.
And does it get replenished when?
Well,
Next-
new fiscal
time.
year, based on the budget. It doesn't get added to, it's just that is the number.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
But
we don't carry it forward and then get the new tranche added. It starts from zero and you add the number.
But
So-
we did,
Right, so for instance, one of the, you asked me a question about having this meeting as an extension of what we're doing in there the other night. The reason I didn't, I was working with the town clerk. If you remember, we ended up having an extra election, right? And she was concerned, and I was concerned, that she was not enough money in her budget to get through the year because of extra police details, et cetera, et cetera. And she had not gotten back to me by this morning on that, so she doesn't need it. But in case we needed to make a transfer tonight, we had a meeting set up to do it. So,
and the money that we gave to the harbor master was from 24, FY 24.
Yeah.
On July 1st, we go back to 50,000.
50, okay.
And then that will carry us until
the next
the next one.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
Old business?
Huh?
Or about this?
About any topic or another. So you want to?
Oh, yes.
This is number 5. Not the way you
Very
try.
active tonight, aren't
It
you?
might be 6, I don't know.
I think she's way up.
So could we get an update on emails for the finance committee? Because it just seems like we asked for this months ago, and I don't know about you, but I worked for a technology company, and I don't think it takes that long to issue email addresses, so.
Okay, the other night we identified that we had not been successful so far, right? And I heard Julie say, or point to our tech person and say, that tech person's working on it, right? Did you hear that?
Yeah.
So,
Yes, I did hear that, but I also heard that they were working on it months ago, so.
no, I understand that, but
how
I'm
do we
not
get
sure, Marcus,
resolution?
who are you working with to get email addresses before?
The director.
You- oh,
She knows we've requested them.
Okay, well, now in public and on TV, we have requested it, so I'll probably get ratcheted up a level. And we will ask our liaison at every meeting what the progress is, or what the status is.
He's making a
getting
note
email
right now.
addresses.
I'm sending an email right now.
Because, if I could comment, I really would like to be using the town email to do this work instead of my personal email.
Understood?
I think we should audit her personal
And by the
email.
way, it's too hard for me to remember which of your personal emails to use all the time, for what reason, so I would appreciate that happening too.
So is the current escalation point the board, or should we talk to the town administrator?
We're talking to our liaison.
We're talking to our liaison. Yeah.
Everything
Let-
goes through the.
let-
You guys need to be-
Everything's lays out
No,
fair
but-
right
but-
now.
But
I'm gonna ask-
the issues with the town, not the board.
I'm going to ask the question to the TA and get the time frame,
Thank you.
and then the answer will be given to you all when I get it. Or I'm sorry, to you, Mr. Chair.
The best is to send me my new email address along with everybody else's, and then we say,
And
okay,
he
it's done, right?
And he won't be able to open it because he doesn't know how to get into it.
It's done. No.
just under other, just a couple of things, I'm glad Jeff is here. When we do the
Thanks,
town
Mark.
report, if we could have this has been coming up, you've plenty of time to do this, have the gross income of the employee. Most of the other towns have that, what their gross is. What you have to do for Harwich, you have to take their gross salary plus their overtime plus their other to get the overall gross wages. That would just simplify things in terms of what the report, it makes it easier to read. And I did check with other towns and they all have the gross things.
He wants to know
We
which job
finally
to go
found
for.
somebody who reads the report.
What's
Yeah,
that?
I just
We
wanted
finally
to-
found someone who reads the report.
Yeah, it's just, you want to see what somebody makes, but it's in 3 categories, but it doesn't have what the gross is.
You mean the annualized?
Yes,
The annual salary?
annualized, yeah.
That's what I was
See
thinking.
what-
$2,500, Mark. That's what I meant. 2,400, sorry.
2,400.
2,400.
I said that's out.
The other thing is, if we wanted, as we plan ahead for the upcoming year, if we'd consider like Barnstable County Retirement, perhaps getting them in. We had a 10% increase from them to have them sit down and see what this would help with our budget planning, both for us and the select board, to help budget plan for the upcoming year, just a thought to think about. On health insurance, I don't know the answer to this. I know we use Blue Cross. Most state employees have the GIC, just to look at that, and maybe there's a union thing, you can't do that. And final thing, well, this is a great tool here, the timeline, that was put out by Megan Eldridge. Of course, it didn't come out landscape, so I had to handwrite it in, but, I mean, as a clerk, I'd be willing to be like the timekeeper, just to remind us.
Well, okay, so let's just, on that topic, we talked, the other night, we just threw stuff out, and I know you said the list was wonderful, whatever, but it did happen there, and people shaking their heads, yes, you develop a Gantt chart for, for the process from now to town meeting next year. Who's doing that? I guess that's a question, right? Is there someone within administration that's gonna do that? They're gonna look to us to do it, you guys, who's gonna do it? There's no sense everybody doing it, right?
Absolutely
So we have
not.
one common document, we trade back and forth.
Right.
Make sure it's comprehensive with the elements that need to be done, and then we all agree, well, we know by the charter what the dates are, if we need to put dates in there, sort of thing, yeah. This is number 7?
I like the data room.
Could you stand up on these?
Who brought up the data room idea? Was that you?
What's that?
The data room, I call it a data room, but
A place on the warrant?
Centralized.
Yeah.
a centralized,
The website should have one folder on there or a spot.
centralized electronic location where we can see the latest version as well as the Gantt chart, where we can all access
That's-
on demand the information instead of,
Yeah.
I get, 10 documents at 5 o'clock right after I got home from work, and I need to review it by the next day. Because if that data room was there, then we could access it. I
Anytime.
call it a data room, but you know what I'm
As
saying.
long as it's updated on a reasonable basis. If it's not kept up, then it's useless.
Shared folder.
Well, as soon as a new
Shared.
version comes out, a share folder, as soon as a new version comes out, it's posted.
Yeah.
And
Things have to
everybody,
be dated,
Yeah.
that kind of
it
stuff.
would be really just next generation.
I know,
I think of what included in that concept though, or could be included, but I think for our purposes still, and maybe some of it's in your list, we need to try and put together, what I'm concerned with the dates and the deadlines and what appears in the past, or at least last year, is that what we're seeing that may be on a due date is a document at this level and not the depth under it that we'd like to have and need to, and should have, and I believe used to have, back when there was a real thick, the thick book
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
was full of
Right,
stuff
right.
instead of empty. And to some extent, part of the list is defining the documents at different deadlines, I think, at those different deadlines, what should be available as information at each one of those. So that, and it's not just, it's not just a one-liner. more than that. kind of thing.
Yeah.
You'll have
If you-
four subgroups under it. You gotta cut it out somewhere, right?
If you look at the operating budget, I have 3 lines that say operating budget. One is budget detail for salary and wages, expenses, and capital. One is operating budgets, current budget, proposed budget, past budgets, and 2 years of actuals. And then operating budgets for the town, wastewater, sewer, the 2 schools. So it's like the school, all 5 budgets, they should be in the same format where it's actual budget, you know, proposed budget.
I think you're gonna have to define the word detail.
Right. Well, that's because, like you say, we used to get the detail before. Anybody that's been around here for a while knows what the detail means, but I can pull out many copies of what used to be the detail and have that available. In
No,
fact,
I
I'll
think it-
send you a copy just for
Right.
fun.
Right.
So you can say, here's the detail we used to get. And it used to be handwritten in the beginning, in detail.
Now, I think.
Everybody's person's name would be there, what their salary was, what their benefits was, what their, everything was, budgeted.
Exactly. Now I think detail is believed to be Appendix B.
Right. That's not the detail, that's just the overhead. But some of us been around for a while know what the detail is.
Jeff, another topic would be, in my mind anyhow, getting a quarterly, either presentation report and just where you are budget versus actual.
Say one more time, quarterly.
Quarterly financial statement that
Yep.
says, okay, here's, a summary that says, okay, police department, in the first quarter, they were budgeted for $12.95. They actually spent $11.17. That kind
Wouldn't
of,
that be great?
huh?
Wouldn't that be great?
I think at their last meeting, Selectman McCaskill was quite animated about his request to get quarterly reports. And I think if it wasn't clear to the town administrator from his comments, then it wasn't clear. But it was clear to everybody
Yeah, but-
else on planet Earth that he wants quarterly reports.
The 5-year forecast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could I just expand on the quarterly report? So not everything happens in equal amounts every month or every quarter. So in my experience, looking at mid-year results, whether it's first, second, third quarter, it's important to look at the actuals from the prior year or multiple years for that point in time. So December 31st, when we get that second quarter year-to-date report, we're looking at also what it was year-to-date the prior year, maybe a couple of past years. And at the same time, in a spreadsheet, I'm talking about the dream world here, but in a spreadsheet, what the full year actual was for that year, that past year, or that past
Yeah, of
couple
course.
of years. Because then you can say, well, for the last few years, we have spent 60% of the full year actual as of December 31st. So this year, if we're spending 60% of the budget as of December 31st, we're in good shape. If we spend 70% of the budget,
Right.
we're not in such good shape. But for every single department, that seasonality is different. So you need to look at that level. For
Same
past year,
kinda
full
thing.
year and partial year.
Same kind of thing in the revenue. We
Yeah,
have so many
exactly.
months that all the revenue comes in.
Yeah.
Or a great portion of it June when we sell stickers and all the stuff that comes out of highway. So if you're looking at, you can be even looking at May and say, geez, they're not gonna make it. And then June happens and boom, there it is. So we have the same seasonality in receipts
Yep.
that we do on expenditures.
Okay, anything else?
Are there other towns doing quarterly reports?
Other towns what?
Doing quarterly reports?
Hope you would get that answer.
I'm looking, but in terms of creating more work for the finance department,
Well-
It's always a topic.
reports don't come out for free.
No, I know, but.
Well, if I may jump in, if the select board asked for it, it's an easy to just slide you a copy as well.
The,
Right, but
Right.
generating 3 more reports per year for the town and making sure they're accurate.
when
That's an expense.
Munis runs well, you put in the fields you're looking for, it's not about checking it, but at least generating that report. One I understand is pretty straightforward. So, but then I think the important thing is for someone, whether it's a finance director or the town administrator, to digest it and summarize it. Just a big fat document, but here's where we are. Police department's on track, the highway department's 10% behind, something, blah, blah, blah. We're not gonna worry about, do we have to stop buying pens and paper or something? I mean, you're looking for big things, right? You're looking for things that make a difference. As you
And
move
whether or
forward.
not we have to hold any of the $125,000 reserve fund because so-and-so's running really behind or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, that kind of thing.
The weather's been bad, there's no golf in May, kind of deal.
Okay, so in our next meeting, which will be in July, unless we're already posted, right, for July something, you got at least the resume.
I would get the rooms reserved, I have to still post it.
Yeah, okay.
For when,
It'd be the second Thursday,
Yeah.
so we went back to.
Can I go ahead and ask Judith to post them several months ahead?
Well, except for you don't have an agenda.
You need an agenda to post
Yeah,
it.
yeah, okay.
You need
All
an
right.
agenda.
That's right,
Because
okay.
people, the public needs to know what we're gonna talk about.
Right, right,
They
okay.
can't all be out
I
there.
have the rooms
Yeah.
reserved in any case.
But the next time, we will reorganize. We always do it at the first meeting after the fiscal year ends. Also, we need to think about, we have 2 slots that are representatives to the capital outlay plan. So keep that in mind.
I'm sorry, what was that? What plan?
The capital outlay committee,
Oh.
we have 2 representatives, and, we get to designate 2 representatives to that. And then just like Jeff is here, we have liaisons to all the major departments and whatnot, so. Start thinking about that. I do think it's appropriate to shift things, shuffle things a bit every couple of years, so that people get a more exposure as to what's going on, and get more experience.
Hands-on.
Yeah, get to know more about what's going on in government, so. All right, anything else?
Thank you for coming
Jeff, we
to
thank
me.
you for coming, we
Thanks for
appreciate
having
it. We appreciate it. We hope you get elected.
Reappointed, whatever.
If we can do anything more, let us know.
Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, thank you,
Okay,
Jeff.
so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second?
Let's vote that.
yes.
Aye.
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 I.
Aye.
Unanimous for adjourned. And the time is that clock right? 7:25?
Committee.
7:26?
Great to have you.
7:26?
How long is that?
Still recording.
Dana, thanks for all your work.
14.